YouTube is ready for us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Looks like the stream is now live on YouTube. Thank y'all for coming. Okay, those of you thanking me, thank you, all of you who support my work on a regular basis. I mean, it's a pleasure to be able to be here. And I personally don't teach AP World History, but the DBQ is scored on the same rubric. I've got a DBQ rubric for AP World History, which I have modified for this year's exam. Now, I will be joined by a subject matter expert, Emily Glankler, who is from the Anti-Social Studies podcast, teaches AP World History in Austin, Texas. So she's going to be joining me in just a bit so that she'll be able to explain this to y'all. Now, I've got a rubric on my website. I'm going to go ahead and put the link here so that y'all are, privy to that. So on my website, you can see my AP World History DBQ rubric, and I'm going to go ahead and put this into the YouTube chat as well. So let's go ahead and share that. Now, there's a link to my rubric in the YouTube description, also a link to Emily's channel. Okay, so Emily's got a podcast. She's also got a YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and bring Emily in here. We're going to add her. So she's going to be co-streaming with me. And again, Emily is from Anti-Social Studies. Okay, so once she gets up here, I'm going to have her, tell us a little bit about herself and also about what she does real quick. And she's actually going to be able to tell us some stuff that's specific to AP World. Emily, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Perfect. How's it going?
Oh, going great. I tell you, it's been a day. So I figured that since I've already done APUSH and APUSH and Euro, might as well go to AP World History. And I'm going to go ahead while you introduce yourself. I'm going to share my screen so that people can see your YouTube channel while you're talking.
Cool. Okay, hey y'all. So I'm Emily Glankler. Like Tom said, I teach AP World History in Austin. And I also, a few years ago, started my podcast, Anti-Social Studies. That's mostly what I use my YouTube channel for now, is as another way to post those podcast episodes, because some kids don't know what a podcast is, but they understand YouTube very well. That podcast was started just as a way to teach history to people who forgot everything from their high school history class. So originally, my audience was like adults who would come up to me and say, I don't remember anything from history. Then my students found it and really liked it because I was talking like a normal person and not talking like a teacher. So basically, season 1 goes through all of world history. You can see up there. The relevant episodes for us now are really, I'll put in the chat, but episodes 5 through 10. So what's nice is that really, like, if your kids are looking for a really simple overview, very conversational, not AP language of the content, they can really listen to 5 episodes or so and get everything that's going to be covered on this year's test, which is nice. And then I'm attempting to move forward and also do, I did some current events episode, and now I'm in the middle of a US history season that I've had to put on pause because of all this.
Okay. Well, yeah, hopefully I can get to join you for that U.S. history season sometime.
I know, right?
A subject that I actually do teach. So with that, Emily, we are going to make an effort to speak to the AP World community in plain language. Now, I think Emily's got her own rubric as well that she's welcome to share in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and, share the rubric that I've created for all of the histories here and kind of go into a few things in terms of what's staying the same, what changed. Now, luckily, the College Board didn't make me do a lot of reformatting. It's the same stuff, just different, the numbers are different. I mean, that's basically the only thing, right, Emily?
Yeah, and I mean, for some, it's kind of a big deal. Some of the things, they changed the numbers or they added like partial credit options that they didn't used to have, so.
Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of go into this. We've got here, let's see, we should be able to see. Emily, do you see the rubric projected here?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Emily, how is the first paragraph of the kids, DBQ affected?
Not at all. So the intro is totally the same, right? I mean, I've been teaching my kids to include their contextualization in the intro. Obviously, you don't have to do that. You can embed it throughout. But the simplest way is just have context and your thesis as your intro. And that hasn't changed. That's still 2 points, right? 1 point for each.
Mm-hmm. So they're going to start it the exact same way. Of course, what I always say is that, by this point in the year, a student either understands context or they don't. And this is a point, especially since the students don't have the benefit of face-to-face instruction, that contextualization is one of those things. It's going to be so important before you go into this exam. That you have a strategy. Okay, so one thing, and I'm going to share this, we're going to go into this a little bit more later, but I've got 3 6-point strategies. Now, we don't know how many points out of 10, this is a 10-point rubric, we don't know how many points are going to be necessary to score, but I'm guessing a 5 to 6, a 5 or a 6 out of 10 is going to be a 3. So I've got 3 6-point strategies that we're going to be sharing in a little bit and discussing. And Emily, you might have some, some strategic things that you want to get into as well, might have some ideas that I didn't have earlier. But as far as this goes, some of you will be writing an intro paragraph with contextualization and thesis, and some of you will just be writing your thesis statement if your strategy does not involve the contextualization point. Now, Emily, the biggest changes that we're seeing are in the use of evidence. So let's go ahead and break this down, what we've got displayed here as far as the documents and the outside evidence.
Yeah, so this was really interesting, and there was some confusion this morning about exactly how many points this was going for. But basically, for using the documents, if they get all the points offered, they could get 3 points just for their use of the documents. So essentially, if they just describe 2 documents, they get a point. That's like the easiest point you could possibly think of. Literally, you don't even have to use it really to support an argument. You just describe it and show that you understand what it's saying. Then if you use maybe those 2 documents to actually support an argument, you get another point. And then you get the total of 3 points if you use 4 documents to support your argument. So this is a big change from before, where it was like you needed to use, I think it was 6, right? You needed to use 6 to support an argument to get
6 out of 7. So now, they've got the support point light. And one thing is, one of the strategies that I'm going to share is basically a 2-document DBQ. Now, of course, I'd recommend using 3 because that way you can screw up on one. But I mean, conceivably, out of these 5 documents, you can pass the exam using only 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah. Especially because when we get down to like the kind of analyzing the document, that's the same number there is 2, right? You have to get full points there, you just have to evaluate the HIP of 2 of the documents. So in theory, you could have like a 2-body paragraph DBQ, where in each body paragraph, you just address 1 document. And if you do it really well, you could get all the credit except for that last, document point.
Yeah, and we did mention, I guess, that what I call the I love lamp point, for those of you who've seen Anchorman, the description point, that's gone down from 3 to 2. Okay, so that's something, that basically the same exact thing. All I've done here, formatting wise, was I got rid of the other documents. So 5 documents total, and you can get. You can get one of these points here and one of the points here for using only, here only 1, here only 2. And then we've got a slight change in the outside evidence, right?
Yeah, so now they're offering 2 points for outside evidence. You could have 2 separate pieces of outside evidence and get 2 points, and there's partial credit. So basically, for each outside evidence you bring in that supports your argument, you can get a point up to 2. So again, in theory, right, you could have 2-body paragraphs. You have your argument that's supported by 1 document and 1 piece of outside evidence. And then you have another body paragraph supported by the other document and another piece of outside evidence.
Okay, and one thing that we want to note here is we are going to be getting into some more specific stuff here. Okay, so the purpose of this broadcast is to kind of give y'all a general idea of what's happening, but we are going to be doing some more in-depth things. Okay, so for one thing, we want to note that if you're a teacher on my email list, then you've gotten a link to Emily's workshop that she's going to be doing for teachers tomorrow through Marco Learning, there is also something for students and parents. Okay, so for those of you who are students and parents, what we want to do here, I'm going to, and this is for all of the AP subjects, just kind of with some general stuff, with John Muscatello from Marco Learning. Emily and I have been doing some work with Marco. Both of us have been working with that company, and they're going to have a lot of stuff. For example, like one thing that I'm 99% sure that Marco will have released is an annotation sheet. Okay, so basically, because we're not going to be able to print the documents, annotate them. Those of you who are familiar with Marco Learning, let me just do a quick poll. I'm familiar with Marco Learning's materials. Okay, so I'm familiar with Marco Learning's materials. Yes or no. Okay, so just to see. And the thing is, I'm gonna advise you to make sure, if you're not already, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Tom Richey. Emily, how do they find you on social media?
So I'm at Anti-Social Studies. So on Instagram, that's where I'm the most active. I also have a Facebook page too, that's Anti-Social Studies.
So basically, at Tom Richey, at Anti-SOC Studies, right?
Yeah.
So Anti-SOC Studies and Marco Learning. I would recommend following all of those accounts on Instagram. All three, which we're across platforms, but all three of us are active on Instagram. You want to know when stuff's coming out to help you. So some things that are going to be out to support are going to be things like annotation sheets. Also, the College Board has sanctioned notes. So we're going to be here to help you with that. Like, here's this period. And of course, we want to note that you're not going to want to spend a lot of time looking at notes during this exam, but what you are going to want to do is for each major period, and Emily, I would anticipate you've probably got, I don't want to speak for you, but there's going to be some stuff coming out. You want to follow Emily, and if you're, so when you're studying in advance, if your DBQ's on Unit 3, for example, if it's emphasizing Unit 3, here are like 3 to 5 things that if they're not in the documents, they would be good to use for outside evidence. Of course, you're going to need to go into specifics, but we're going to have things that are out to help you. So make sure that, you search for Emily at Anti-Social Studies. I've got the rubric out there. She's going to be a lot more helpful than I am on the content. And then we've also got the stuff we're doing with our friends at Marco Learning. Now, the other thing is what we want to get into here is the complex understanding point remains unchanged. Okay. Yeah. Now, one thing though that I want to note here is that the complex understanding point, it may remain unchanged, but now it's only 10% rather than 1 out of 7. So what I'm telling people, unless you're trying to make a 5 on the exam, Drake that sucker, just like one of those memes, like just don't, if you're asking, like on the previous 2 broadcasts, people have asked me questions about complex, like how do I get complex understanding? What is complex understanding? If you don't know, don't even try it. And that's where, when I was saying earlier, I'm thinking about Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of Revenge of the Sith, where he's like, don't do it, Anakin. I have the high ground. When it comes down to it, the College Board is giving you 45 minutes plus 5 minutes to upload. So you don't have as much time as usual, and complex understanding is very time consuming to make that complex argument. So what I'm going to say here is, in that sense, it's like the College Board has the high ground. Don't try to show off. Like if you're not trying to make a 5, don't try to show off. And if you're trying to make a 5, you need to have done this so many times. I'm going to recommend that you write a DBQ a week, that you've got, when people say, what if I run out of time or something like that? You need to write a DBQ a week. You need to have a strategy set in advance, because you can't afford to mess up on this. So between Marco Learning and the College Board, I think that they're going to have enough materials for you to write a DBQ a week. Emily, what are some other miscellaneous thoughts that you have to share on this?
Yeah, well, I agree on the complexity point. I call it the unicorn point for my kids, because it's like, I don't know, sometimes you stumble upon it and then a lot of times you don't. And I agree that anyone that's spending their time intentionally trying to get complexity is probably wasting time where they could get 2, 3, 4 points somewhere else, right? So especially now that they're giving partial credit. So the 2 places to me that I'm really going to emphasize with my students and practice is how to use outside evidence to where you get the point. You don't just throw it in there randomly, you incorporate it into your argument, and how to hip those documents to where you get those points. Because now, used to, you had to hip, I believe, 3 documents just to get 1 point. Now they're giving you partial credit. It's the same as outside evidence. You can hip up to 2 documents and get 1 or 2 points. So for me, that's 4 points right there. That is something you can practice with your students, or you can practice at home way more than that 1 complexity point. So I totally agree. And I think if students are bringing in really good outside evidence, doing a really good job of analyzing the document, creating using that reasoning to make connections, you might stumble upon complexity. But I agree that I don't think it's worth it to spend a lot of time intentionally trying to do it just for like your ego, right? It's not worth it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They're not going to say that you got 10 out of 10. They're going to say you got this score. And this is the thing. I think that, you know, and again, a 5 is really about ego more than anything else. Yeah. And this is probably one of those times, given the weirdness of this. Now, it's going to be, easy to pass, but to get a 5, it's just, yeah, put your ego aside here. Now, Emily, I'm going to put up 3 different 6-point strategies, and you may, you know, let's hear your thoughts on these, and also you may have another strategy that you think would work here. So what I did here is, for one, I've got 2 that are outside evidence heavy, and then when we've got students that are asking, what if this ends up being a really bad topic for me, I've got that too. Okay, so what I would say here is, by this time, students know, like, if you're good with context or not. Okay, so we need to think, like, at this point, that you are in a situation where, you know, you're either good with context or you're not good with context. And so going from there, we need to think in terms of, if you're not good with context, don't worry about it. And this is what you're going to do here. Thesis accurately describes 2 documents, supports an argument with 2 documents. Now, supporting an argument with 4, I'm only going to have in my no outside evidence strategy, because this is going to be a time suck to try to do, to try to support an argument with 4 documents, and also to do like POV plus and all that kind of stuff, and second piece of outside evidence. You're going to need to think about, how much of this do I want to do? Now, if you want to make a 4, I would recommend putting 2 more points on here in the places of your choosing. When you go to a 4 or a 5, then you're putting 2 more points wherever you choose. So if you're not a contextualization person, and you need to know that about yourself, okay, as you know, which if you're binge watching stuff, one of my favorite movies is you know, Clint Eastwood, the Dirty Harry movies from the 1970s, where he said, you know, a man's got to know his limitations, which, you know, so does a woman, so does someone who is gender fluid. Any person needs to know, like, if you don't go into this knowing your expectations, or I mean your limitations and your strengths and your weaknesses, you are going to stumble. So know in advance. So basically, I would pick one of these strategies depending on if you're doing context or not. Now, what I've done here is, in this case, this is going on POV plus or HIP or whatever you want to call it. And then this one says, you know what, focus on contextualization and leave this out of it for the time being. Now, then there is the, you know, only documents. So it is possible here to get 6 points without ever going into any kind of outside evidence or complex understanding. In this case, this would be focused on the documents. So in all of these cases, you're thinking about, how can I best budget my time? And again, for a 4, you want to make sure, just put 2 more points wherever you'd like them. And really, if you're, you know, hopefully your ego matches your abilities. Okay, so when you think about Anakin Skywalker / do we call him Darth Vader at that point? It's hard for me to call him Darth Vader without the suit. Okay, he turned to the dark side, but there's no suit. I can't see Darth Vader there. So the thing is, you want to be very careful this year about trying to make a 5. Remember, only about 10% of people make a 5. Emily, do you have some you know, some suggestions on this?
Yeah, I mean, I like these different strategies, and I think that just what you're saying of going in, knowing what you're going to shoot for, is the key. A few people have been asking, like I saw in the questions, like, what do we mean by outside evidence, right? In a DBQ, we mean a fact that's totally separate from the document. So something that's about about something that you could not have learned from the documents. And it's not just like additional fun facts that relate to the documents. It's like a full separate thing, but it's not a document that you have to then cite on your own and just know. So to me, I think with it being an open book, open note test, that makes that outside evidence point a lot easier if you come in with organized notes. And that's what I agree with. Like I posted earlier, my world history resources on my website. And one of the things I have are unit review packets. Now, I'm going to be frantically updating those this weekend, but basically what I'm having my students do is make like thematic charts for each time period. So they're making like spice tea charts with all the different themes and picking one civilization from each region to have a pretty detailed overview on. So in the first units, they might say the Abbasids for the Middle East and the Song dynasty for China. And then they go through like what's happening socially, what's happening politically. If you do that and you have really efficient notes in front of you, all of a sudden that outside evidence point or those 2 points become a lot more feasible because it's not about memorizing and just having to know that knowledge. But the key, and especially for teachers, is we need to be really doing a lot to help our kids understand how they need to get that point. Because I think a lot of kids think, I'm just going to throw out a fact that I know and get outside evidence. And it really needs to be a full analysis of like connecting it back to your argument. But to me, I just think those points now become a lot more in reach for a lot of kids if they come in prepared with good notes. If you're just thinking you're going to flip through the textbook and try to cover 700 years in a 45-minute DBQ, there's no way.
Yeah, and I would say as well, people who are, who are more prepared to where you're not even dealing with notes. That's going to be the best thing to where, I mean, this is where we have to remember there's going to be an even spread of 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. And you want, the more original you are, the better of a chance you're going to have, the better prepared you are. Like I've told, when I'm talking to my tutoring clients and students, if you have something like Albert I.O., like, use it. Like multiple choice is not dead. It is still the single best way to prepare for something like this where you're going to have to employ outside evidence. That the more multiple choice you use in preparing, that's going to be good. But the most important thing is going to be write a DBQ every week. Now, I did put Emily's website, antisocialstudies.org. Okay, no dashes in this case, just antisocialstudies.org. You can find Emily's website where she's putting a lot of resources. Now we've got a few questions here. Let's see. Yes. So Sharon, as far as the reason that they've redone the rubric is because we are, in a situation where you've got 45 minutes total. There's no reading, 45 minutes plus a reading period. Is that your understanding as well, Emily?
What I understand is they said 45 minutes plus 5 minutes to upload. So that 45 minutes includes everything.
So 50 minutes from like the time you open this thing to everything. And that's why, I'm just encouraging people, put your ego aside. Like, don't try, now if you want to try to make a 4, by all means, go ahead and try to do that. But there would only be a handful of students that I'd ever counsel to try to get all, 10 of these points. So yeah, this is going to be time is going to be a factor. Lisa, yes, this is going to be available on my YouTube channel. You can also use this link to Crowdcast, but it's actually co-streaming right now on my YouTube channel. This will remain there. Okay, so Emily, Lynette was asking about outside evidence, which, one thing you were saying was make sure it's relevant to the argument. Another thing is make sure it's specific and it's descriptive, okay? It needs to be descriptive. I usually recommend, if you're trying to do outside evidence, 2 sentences, 1 sentence to describe it and then another sentence to kind of, tie it in and do the relevance. Now, Emily, this is a question specifically about okay, so for Ms. Franco, what would you have to say here?
Well, so, I mean, for example, if you look in the course exam and description, the College Board has included the Abbasids. So they're on the decline, but they're still around in 1200. They're declining at that point. But if you look at the CED, they heavily emphasize the 2 civilizations from 1200 to 1450 that they talk about a ton are the Song dynasty in China and the Abbasids in the Middle East. So I've been telling my kids, like, because honestly, I would be really surprised if they make a DBQ from that first time period. Because if you remember, originally they told us the DBQ would not come from units 1 and 2. So in theory, it could now, but I would be surprised if they did. So strategically, I'm probably going to tell my kids.
They would have to actually start writing it now. Like,
they would have to rewrite and come up with whole new documents from like the medieval era, which I just don't think they'll do. So strategically, I'm telling my kids, I would just know a decent amount about the song, the Abbasids, and maybe either the Aztec or Inca, if nothing else, just for context. If you're going to bring up something, if you're talking about the Middle East later, that might be helpful. But I think strategically, I'm going to focus most of my time content-wise on post 1450.
Okay, excellent. And one thing we're talking about, we've got here, Sharon is asking, about a 2-body paragraph essay. I think that's fine, because typically I recommend to students like the 3-body paragraph essay if they're going, asterisk, if they're going for complex understanding, which I think that, this really, unless you fit in a certain category, again, just don't do it, Anakin, stay away from it. So Emily, we're about to close off this broadcast, but we've got plenty more that we're going to be putting out there. Are there any last words of advice, just real quick? And everybody, just make sure we are going to be back with more specific stuff. Okay, more specific stuff is coming. We just wanted to give you something in general.
Yeah, is it possible, Tom, for me to share my screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
If you look there, you should have a little icon right there above your,
okay,
your icon.
I just want to show you something really quickly that has really helped me understand this. I posted this on my Instagram, but I've had a lot of kids who have been like, oh, so it's only a DBQ. I don't have to study content anymore. And they're feeling like they can just understand the documents, which in theory they can, but not really if they want a 4 or 5. The way I've broken it down for myself is that really, if you think about it, it's kind of an even split. Almost half the points emphasize content. Like, you can't talk about context or outside evidence or really complexity if you don't really understand the facts and the specific evidence that comes along with world history. And then the other half, the 6 points, are really emphasizing skills. So these are things that you can really practice with your students. You can practice thesis statement writing. You can practice using the documents. You can practice analyzing the point of view, whatever. And so to me, this has been helpful, where I think that if we're thinking about, if you're lucky enough to still be able to teach your kids like I am, I'm going to spend some time with these major developments and specific examples. That's what I'm going to have in my review packets that I'm posting on my website. And then really, I'm going to have my kids over and over and over again, not necessarily writing 5 DBQs a week, but practicing these skills of using a document accurately and evaluating its point of view. That's stuff that we know will show up and will be easy to prepare for. And like Tom's saying, if you just do these things well, you can get a 6 out of 10. So anyway, that's really how I'm going to approach this as a teacher. And that's how I'm answering my students who think, great, I don't have to study any facts anymore. I can just figure it out from the documents. I think you got to study a lot, and you still have to study those broad developments to make sense of whatever weird DBQ they're going to give us.
Yeah, and if you're just, we're going to put stuff out there to help you, but, if the people who are going to score really well are going to be those people who are using, like, it obviously came from their own head. And so let's all stay in touch with each other. Keep in mind, we've got 5 full weeks until this exam. Okay, now what day is the, what day is the AP World?
Ours is Thursday, May 21st. It's just 1 week.
Oh, so actually we've got 6 full weeks. Okay, so almost 7 weeks. So this is not a time to panic. We're not giving, we've got to have some time to regroup. The College Board has dripped some stuff out over the last 22 hours, and we're just doing with what we can. So make sure to stay in touch with us. Again, I'm Tom Richey, at Tom Richey anywhere, about anywhere you go, except for, Snapchat, Tom Richey SC, but I don't really share a lot of relevant stuff there. But with that, now Emily, again, her name is Emily Glankler, and she's on Instagram, very active on Instagram, anti-soak studies on Instagram. Same with Twitter, Emily?
Yeah, I'm trying to get more into Twitter. Instagram's really, if you're looking for updates and help for the AP exam, that's really where I'm posting. Like, I'm posting a WAP key term a day in my stories so kids can follow. That's where I'm putting most of the stuff.
Okay, so she's got stuff there. She's got her antisocialstudies.org website. And go ahead, those of you on YouTube right now, go to Antisocial Studies for, she's going to be posting podcasts and stuff like that there. And remember that we've got this webinar tomorrow at let's see, at 3 p.m. Eastern, going to be Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, we always get questions as well. We always get questions as well about, do we think they're going to be able to pick the DBQ? And I don't see that happening. Okay. I think that, I think we're probably going to see 2 or 3 versions of the DBQ out there. But when you open it up, what I'm expecting is this is your DBQ. And so make sure that you not only know content, but you make sure that if you run into a topic that you are not familiar with, that you have on there, okay, I'm not panicking. I'm going to interpret the documents and I'm going to go with my 6-point strategy. Out of 5 documents, you should be able to understand at least 2 or 3. Yeah. So again, let's not panic. Emily is here to help you, and I'm here to help you with format whenever I can. And remember, to follow our friends at Marco Learning as well. So lots of stuff here to support you. Thank you very much, Emily, for joining us today.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for Sharon on the side that the thing he was talking about was for the students and parents at 3. I just posted a link to mine. It's going to be an hour long of me talking about my strategies for the WAP exam tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. So those are the 2 different options. So if you're a teacher, come to me, click on that link to register.
And actually, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that link just because if you're a teacher, I would recommend probably email her about that or something like that. Just because we want for that teacher thing to be teachers only. We want that to be special for teachers. But there is at 3 p.m., just basically for all AP students and parents, John Muscatello from Marco, lots of years experience in test prep. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again, Emily from Antisocial Studies, and we are looking forward to helping you prepare for your exam. And thank y'all for your support, and it is always a pleasure.